from this point to this point, that's 3 half steps or a minor third. This is an introduction to intervals.
This is what I mean when I say diatonic pattern on the neck.
Hi, my name's Trav, and today we are approaching theory and developing technique. Come on.
Yeah, come on, it's gonna be fun. Let's do it.
Okay, this is kind of how I am. When I was given my diatonic patterns and I was told that I was told how chords were made up, minor triads and major triads, I was like, well, I'm not going to play the prescribed chords. I'm going to create all my own chords. And what was funny is I either came up with chords that really kind of sucked and weren't useful, or sometimes I invented the chords that were already made. So is math a language that we invented to describe something, or is it innately true? Music theory is just like that. If you kind of, as soon as you get a rule of harmony and you run with it, you're going to run right back into the same shapes that have already invented, or the same philosophies that have already been thunk, the same questions that have already been asked. And I truly believe that is beautiful. And as a teacher, that's what I'm trying to teach, is that kind of curiosity, that discovery, that exploration. Oh my gosh, I watched Herbie Hancock and Paul Simon create the other day in this documentary film, and I thought, oh, there's so much more for me to discover. Music is an inner realm of exploration that we can share with others on the outside, and theory is a way that we can talk about it. I like to talk about theory and technique, and along my developmental line, I've had a lot of questions that I was able to form because of theory and technique. You can start asking questions about what constitutes music in the context of theory. So every theoretical question represents our hunger to know music more.
This is what I mean when I say diatonic pattern on the neck.
Theory. Music theory. What is music made of? What does it mean to play music? How do we understand music? How do we gain theory and practical understanding? Do you see this neck? It's an XY grid system.
How necessary is theory in the playing of music? Not only do I like to play music, I love to talk about music. I mean, as soon as Cad put on Giant Steps and I was blown away, I wanted to talk about how Giant Steps made me feel, and I wanted to talk about concepts and theory with my teacher.
This is what I mean when I say diatonic pattern on the neck.
As I'm trying to develop technique, what I'm looking for is consistency of motion, something that's repeatable. It's a very reductionist approach in a sense. If I can't do this, how can I do it? I have to build and grow my technique step by step. Every musician must develop their own technique. I gave a guitar lesson the other day to someone who had limitations on how far they could supinate their elbow. When Django Reinhardt lost these 2 fingers in a fire, he had to make a big comeback and relearn technique with only these 2 fingers. He did so and revolutionized guitar playing forever. Thanks, Django. Okay, I have this little drum here, and what I'm doing is I'm developing technique. And technique has everything to do with how this drum is sitting in my lap right now and how I'm addressing the drum with my hands. Now, I'm not claiming to be teaching drum technique right now. What I'm talking about is developing technique on the fly when I get a new instrument in my hands. And so here's what I've come up with so far. I've got a steady rhythm here. I've decided what part of my fingers I'm going to touch the drum with. And then I've gone straight to a digga 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 digga, a subdivided pulse, right? Da
dot, 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 digga, 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 digga.
This is what I mean when I say diatonic pattern on the neck. This is what I mean when I say diatonic pattern on the neck.
How necessary is theory in the playing of music? The short answer to that question is theory is absolutely unnecessary for the playing of music. If you are strong enough in your pitch matching, your rhythm matching, and then you can figure out an instrument, then you are free. You can be as free as a child beating a stump with a stick. However, this is really important to know. Theory is about language and being able to talk about things. Therefore, if you don't know theory, then you won't be able to communicate to other musicians what you mean except for by playing, which is fine. It's just that it may be helpful at some point to be able to talk to others about your musical ideas, and theory can help with that. And also, if you were to be that super musician who did not need theory, and then you were to begin talking to other people about how you did your music, you would actually be talking about theory. You would be creating your own language for theory, and then you would probably find yourself describing things that had already been described before in music. So that's fascinating, and that's just like as above, so below, right? The development of the individual's path is the same as the evolution of the big consciousness. And so that's one really strong thing that humans do, is we pass along information, and we can stand on the shoulders of the giants that have, of the theoretical and practical musical giants that have gone before us. If your practice is beefing you up in the fundamentals area, the areas of pitch matching, rhythm matching, and your ability to interact with your instrument, you can't go wrong with that fundamental practice. It will bear fruit for you. So what might that practice look like? Well, pulse matching and pitch matching. So right here, what I'm doing is I'm producing a fairly regular pulse with my right hand. Check, 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 check. I'm muting in the left hand. I'm not doing anything in the left hand, but I'm just working on this technique. Here's what it might look like to use your guitar to practice pitch matching. La, 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 la. You can have fun with it. A moment ago, I said that you can't go wrong with the practicing of the fundamentals. While that is true, the fundamentals are practiced in order to be transcended.
What do you mean transcending the fundamentals?
Great question. Thanks for asking. I've got an answer too.
I asked the question, what's it all made of? And then another guitar player gave me 5 diatonic patterns on the neck, and that answer sufficed for the moment. And I devoted myself to the practicing of those 5 diatonic patterns, and that led to the next thing, and that led to the next thing. There are different ways of making music.
This is what I mean when I say diatonic pattern on the neck. This is what I mean when I say diatonic pattern on the neck.
Hey, do you know how to laugh at yourself? Hey, excuse me. Excuse me.
I have met musicians who are incredibly talented in both the areas of reading and interpreting music and improvising music. Whoa, that's maturity. That is depth of field, brothers and sisters. There are some people who make a lot of music and only read music off of a page. So if you can look at a piece of paper and then identify a particular note on that paper to a particular note on your instrument, and you can learn to subdivide. Right, we get into the fundamentals very quickly here, but you could read music off of a page for your entire musical career, and there have been people who've done that. That would be like loving literature and reading poetry, but not writing poetry or literature. In that instance, you may be able to play pieces that are very complex harmonically and rhythmically and not really understand theory, if that makes sense. Also, if you only read music off of a page, then you may never learn what it's like to use music conversationally. And this description may help us to understand music as a mechanical process, one in which I receive an input and then I receive instructions from that input, and then I create the desired movement and the desired sounds that the paper tells me to make. I don't want it to sound like I'm devaluing the reading of music. That's not what's happening. I mean, it's an incredible gift and talent to be able to reproduce those sounds as they're written. I'm merely speaking of the potential for a deeper experience than the reading of music. For myself, music is a language. So whenever I show up and somebody else has another instrument, I'm listening to what words they're going to speak, in what rhythm, in what meter are they going to speak, in what key, and I'm tuning in because I want to have a conversation. So there are ways you can do music where you never really enter into that conversation. If you have strong pitch matching and rhythm matching skills and the type of mind that can get into the mechanical aspects of the instrument, then theoretically, you could teach yourself any instrument. I say theoretically, but that's just really very practical. If I know how to match a pitch and match a rhythm and interact with a musical tool, then I can find some way to imitate music that I'm hearing, or I can imitate something that I'm singing. The only theory I really know is all practical, so in a sense it's not really theory. All the theory that I know helps me to engage in the musical conversation.
Every place where a string and a fret intersect is a dot on an XY axis. And so we may see shapes beginning to emerge. So if we look at this point here, and then this point here, where this string and this fret are crossing, and their relationship, right? That is a half step. That's the relationship of a half step. That's the interval of a half step. From this point to that point is a half step. From this point to that point is a whole step. Half step is the smallest interval that we have on the guitar. And then a whole step, that's 2 half steps. And then if I went another one to this point, from this point to this point, that's 3 half steps or a minor third. This is an introduction to intervals.
Everything that I know theoretically boils down to understanding intervals and being able to identify intervals and the particular relationships or emotional experiences. And right now, as I'm talking about technique, what I'm talking about is the way our physical body interacts with the instrument. We are trying to discover consistent ways, rhythmic ways, that we can relate to our instrument. And we're putting these pathways into our muscle memory, into our neurological pathway system. So with theory, it was more important that we formed the questions and we're making those inquiries. It's not so much about getting an answer to those questions. Same way with technique. The technique is not really the playing. The muscle memory rhythms, these loops that we store, these rhythmic loops that we store, that's not actually what music is like. It's a pretty close representation, but we actually have to transcend every technique that we integrate, we have to transcend, and that's actually what integration of technique is. It's the transcension of the technique, and now it's available to our subconscious, or it's available to the leading or the guiding of a greater power that we discover in music.